Both of these guys just staying with kind of tried and true decks from earlier in the format, not messing around with Gardevoir or Golisopod or anything like that. No real new cards. There are some interesting things in the deck though. So Brad is playing the Espeon deck, like we talked about. Espeon Garbodor, just kind of one of the Garbodor variants, along with Drampa that you've seen this weekend. It seems like a lot of people are favoring the Espeon right now. And then Pramawat, like we said, is playing the Decidueye Vileplume deck, just a huge deck, kind of innovated by John Kettler last year when Decidueye first came out. Typically, I think that the Decidueye deck has an advantage in this matchup. I think turn 1 Vileplume is just incredibly hard to beat.
Honestly, you always have that advantage if you have turn 1 Vileplume.
Yeah. Turn 1 Vileplume is incredibly hard to beat. Even like later turns, it can be difficult to beat. So normally I would give a slight advantage to Pramawat. However, I'm actually going to flip that around and give a slight advantage to Brad because he does have a Flareon in his deck from Ancient Origins, which will turn his Espeon GX into a Fire type and allow him to hit the Decidueye for weakness. So normally what's kind of a close matchup, but it definitely in Pramawat's favor. I now am bringing that over to Brad as long as he can successfully get that Flareon out and ready to turn on the ability.
And it looks like he might be able to do that because Pramawat's turn has been kind of anemic. 2 Trainer's Mails, not really hitting anything of note. And he had to play an N as a supporter for the turn, which kind of not really what you're looking for early on. You kind of want to play your hand down, get a Sycamore out, and he hasn't even seen a Force of Giant Plants or even a Rowlet.
Yeah, one of the big advantages of this Decidueye Vileplume deck is the ability to play Forest of Giant Plants. That Stadium lets you evolve all of your grass Pokemon immediately and get a turn 1 Vileplume, and even a turn 1 Decidueye GX sometimes. Even I've seen turn 1 Vileplumes and 2 Decidueye GX. Like you wanna play out your hand, you want to get a lot of things out of the board. A turn 1 Vileplume, regardless of the matchup, I think pretty much any deck in Standard, a turn 1 Vileplume swings it to where you're probably 70% to win the game just immediately. And especially if you can follow that up with Decidueye GXs, doing Feather Arrows everywhere. It's incredibly hard to beat, but yeah, Pram does not have it.
Yeah, you actually saw a Wonder Tag there from Tapu Lele GX, and that was his first actual deck search. So he was going through, seeing what he had. His original hand had 3 Decidueye GX in it, so that was the reason he couldn't really play a Sycamore. And so he just attaches Double Colorless and passes, and now it's on Brad to get things going. He has the Energy Evolution ability on Eevee, which is a really nice way to get a quick attacker out and do some damage.
Yeah, Energy Evolution is one of the things that makes the Espeon deck so good. In addition to just being more an efficient way to search out an Espeon, it also, if Pram does ever get the Vileplume down, it kind of lets you search for Pokemon without having to play an Ultra Ball or something like that. So it's just kind of free ways to get Pokemon. And obviously, especially with Espeon in specific, you have the Psybeam attack for 1 Psychic, so you can just start attacking with the GX immediately. Like, you search it out, you're guaranteed to have it, and it's just very, very powerful.
I've honestly been surprised that they keep repinning this Energy Evolution Eevee because there's so many good Evolution Pokemon, especially the GXs now.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the best ways to kind of make those different things playable.
All right, so we see a Wonder Tag from Brad. He opts to get the N. Usually you see the Bridget there, but it may be a sign of, well, my hand's not as strong, so I'll at least have the Espeon GX in play, and then I can just N.
Yeah, it looks like Brad just didn't really have much going on, and if he had gotten a Bridget there, he would have set up his board a little bit, but wouldn't have been able to draw cards. Wouldn't have,
yeah, no follow-up play
Yeah,
for
next
him.
Turn would have been pretty bad for him. He would have been relying on the top of his deck, and he already has a Trubbish. Like, he has an Espeon and a Trubbish in play. This is not how...
This is still a great turn.
Yeah, this is not the ideal board setup, but you're fine just having, your two main attackers in play and then playing an N. Especially when you know that Pramawat has a supporter in his hand.
Yeah, he did Wonder Attack for the Guzma, which kind of didn't really matter because his hand was 4 supporters. The hand he has now actually looks amazing.
Yeah, it looks a lot better. He's actually going to have ways to search out
3
Pokemon.
level ball and a Force of Giant Plants is what I think, or yeah. He's looking to have that explosive turn 2, which he was hoping for turn 1.
And another Eevee hits the board for Brad, which could easily turn into a Flareon. Like we talked about, I think that's really going to be one of the keys to the matchup, is just turning that Espeon GX into both a Psychic and a Fire type and hitting basically Pramawat's entire deck for weakness.
Yeah, you actually have the Ultra Ball in Brad's hand. He chooses not to play it. Maybe that might come back to bite him if Pram can get the Vileplume in play. He actually draws an Ultra Ball too. This hand is amazing. 3 level ball, Ultra Ball, Force of Giant Plants and a Shaman EX to round it all together.
Yeah, this is so this is going to be very similar to what I think Pramawat would have wanted on turn 1, but still having all this on turn 2 is great. You're going to see the power of Forest of Giant Plants combined with these very powerful stage 2 Pokemon.
Yeah, and we believe 3 Rowlet will be coming down, and at least the stage 1. Again, he's making sure what's in his deck, what he can afford to discard, what he wants to choose to get out. Talking with John Kettler with this deck a lot, he was like, well, Vileplume's really strong, but sometimes you need to get the Decidueyes because you play so many items that if you have Vileplume play into Decidueyes, you kind of lose anyway.
Right, yeah, that's kind of been the classic thing with the Vileplume-based decks is you want to get your other evolutions or your other kind of main attackers into play before the Vileplume so you can actually play cards. And look at Pramawat is going off here.
Great. All right, there's a setup for 5. And remember, he still has not played a supporter this turn. He has a Tapu Lele and another Dartrix, so he can Ultra Ball, get a Gloom, get the Vileplume out if he wants to.
Yeah, it looks like if he were to do that, the Vileplume would be stuck in the active position.
Yeah, unfortunately, he drew both of his Revitalizers, which is kind of like those special charges in like the Vespiquen deck that he's used to playing, where if you draw them early, they're kind of useless, but late game, they're amazing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You don't want... I mean, Pramawat's going to get a little bit of value here from discarding the Vileplume and getting it back with Revitalizer, but you definitely want to have those in the mid to late game, and you can just, oh, you knocked out my Decidueye or had to discard some pieces, I'll just get it all back.
And let's see what he decides to go for here. He has a couple options. He does have the Tapu Lele in hand, but he could definitely go for Decidueye.
He already has a Tapu Lele in his hand?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I think Decidueye is the main call here. Like we said, if he were to get the Vileplume out, he would have it stuck in the active position, which is not at all what you want. So I think he's going to probably get a Decidueye, and then looks like he's pulling an end to the front of his deck too, so he's going to go ahead and play that Tapu Lele, just save some time in shuffling.
That's definitely the smart play, saving those Revitalizers for later on in the game.
And he's just saying, you know, this doesn't guarantee me the Vileplume. I might not have it this turn, but I can't just evolve and have it stuck in the active without a float zone, without any way to get it out. He does have Guzma to eventually switch it, but you don't want to just have, you know, rely on yourself having to draw a Guzma, especially when you have a full bench, so you can't even tap a Lele or anything. So Pram taking a little bit of a smart play there that's just not as aggressive.
Yeah, and one big, really the only addition other than Guzma to this deck is Acerola. That card seems like it'll come in huge in this matchup.
Yeah, I think with the Espeon kind of, you know, spreading damage around or doing a small amounts of damage with things like Psybeam, I think just being able to kind of heal all that up and pick up the Pokemon is going to be huge. And then, of course, it's not really a cost for Pramawat to pick up the Pokemon because he just has Force of Giant Plants and can play it all down again.
Yeah, and these players are very comfortable together. They most likely test together in the same circles. And Pram kind of might have a reading like, well, maybe he does have Flareon. If he does, I'm going to place that 20 damage on the Eevee anyway, kind of soften it up, because if that Flareon gets out, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, definitely. That's something as you move into day 2 of the World Championship here, when you have so many elite players. There's definitely secrecy. There's, you know, definitely you want to have a strategic advantage, but these players are very familiar with each other. They played with each other at many events. You have to kind of, you hear rumors about what people are playing, you hear about what people are what they've been testing. So there's definitely some information here that I'm sure these guys know about each other that you at home might not.
All right, now it's on Brad to kind of combat that amazing turn that Pramawat had. He does have the option to try and divide GX, and we actually see the Flareon in his hand.
Yeah, he does have the Flareon. He has a Guzma. Looks like he's just taking some time to decide what to do. He will play the Guzma and get that Decidueye GX in the active position. Just saying, I need to have that in the active. I want to start attacking it.
There's the Floatstone coming down. Natural combo with Guzma.
Yeah, now it's basically just free for Brad. It doesn't really matter. He just can retreat. And there's the Flareon. That's going to be really important. Again, turning all of Brad's Stage 1 Pokemon into Fire types, so they will hit the Decidueye GX for weakness.
So now we will see a Psybeam for 120 damage thanks to weakness and a Confusion. This is something that really hurts the Decidueye deck, is you kind of have these bulky Pokemon, and you rely on Acerola or Floatstone, but if you're not actually set up yet, this confusion can really hurt him.
Yeah, definitely. I think the Acerola does kind of put a nice stop to that. I think without Acerola, it's a lot harder. But yeah, I mean, Pramawat doesn't have one right now. He doesn't really have many options. Like, he's just gonna attach and Sycamore. But the confusion's always been a weird thing where it hasn't ever been super powerful, but just right now with the way the specific numbers on Espeon GX and the specific way the format works out, it's actually really strong to just be like, man, I'm confused. I have to try to attack here. Like, it's just such an awkward place to be.
And there we see a Sycamore from Pramawat. He does have an Ultra Ball, so it'll be interesting to see if he goes for another Decidueye or the Vileplume. He also attached the double colorless to the active. I have to think he doesn't go for the flip. It most likely will be retreated this turn.
Yeah, I have to believe he's not going to risk it, but I think that Decidueye is too valuable because the thing about Decidueye is that in addition to being an attacker, it also has a Feather Arrow ability. So it's fine, it's fine being on the bench, just kind of building damage. Like, it has value outside of just being an attacker.
Yeah, a lot of the ways these decks win is just, well, I'm going to bring up one of your big guys and then just deal 20 damage everywhere until you eventually get tired of me.
Right. And
it does look like he Ultra Balled for the Decidueye. He will have 2 in play now, but they are being threatened by any stage 1 that comes from Brad.
Yeah, Espeon GX, Garbodor will be fire type as well.
Speaking of Garbodor, how many items has Michael played?
Yeah, that's another thing, is that these decks are not item light, and so if they have to play a lot of items to set up their Vileplume, they can definitely be punished by Garbodor, especially now with the Flareon, where you don't even need that many just to start taking knockouts.
And another thing of note is Espeon GX, we've talked about Divide, we've talked about Psybeam, but it has an attack called Psychic. And that's a great attack, especially against a card like Tapu Lele that requires a lot of energy to build up the damage.
Yeah, absolutely. Espeon GX is just kind of has it all. Like, we've seen this with a lot of GX Pokemon. I would say Drampa is the biggest example of this, where they just have all of these interesting things going on. Like, you can Psybeam to kind of do a little bit of damage and confuse. You can Psychic to do a bunch of damage. You can Divide to spread around. Like, they just have so many different options. They're just, it's very hard to play against them because they can do so many different things.
And it looks like they will be getting an item count for us. It's looking dangerously high for
1, 2, 3,
Pramawat
4,
there.
5, 6, 7, 8. So with the Flareon in play, that's going to allow the Garbodor to do
damage.
anything. Yeah.
All right, there we see an N from Brad. He's looking for double colorless at least. Does that even get him the knockout? It's 90. No, he'll be 20 short.
Correct.
But if he gets a way to maybe retreat to the Garbodor, that Trash Lance will get a knockout if he has a Choice Band. So here's the end. Both players get 6 cards. I see a Choice Band. I don't know if I see anything much else. There is a double colorless, so he has the option to Psychic or Divide if he wants to.
Yeah, so Divide GX here. He can take
out the Gloom.
Yeah, he can take out the Gloom and just cut Pramawat off of Vileplume and use his GX attack. There's not really... There's the Tapu Cure GX that he can use, but he's not too concerned with that. But it looks like he's actually just going to go ahead and go in with the Garbodor.
Yeah, so he does have that Choice Band, so the Choice Band will allow him to take the knockout with Trash Lance. And there we go, the first prizes of the game taken by Brad, thanks to Garbodor.
Yeah, I think that's smart from Brad. He's just saying, you know what, I have this knockout here. This is... A Garbodor is a very relevant card. It's a very useful card, but it's also a non-EX attacker. Like, I'm just going to send this up and take the guaranteed knockout, and if you're going to try to do anything against me, you're going to be taking 1 prize.
Yeah, and we see Pramawat promoting the Decidueye, and he will be able to knock out the Flareon with Feather Arrow if he chooses so. He will have to use both of them, I believe, but that's kind of only one of the problems he has.
Right.
Trash Lance is still doing a lot of damage.
Yeah, Trash Lance is still putting a lot of pressure on the board, and even Espeon without the Flareon is putting a lot of pressure on in the exact board state they're in right now. Brad also has 2 Rescue Stretcher as a way to kind of buy back the Flareon. It's definitely, the Flareon is definitely an issue that Pramawat needs to take care of, absolutely. But it's not like knocking it out once deals with it and puts, swings Pramawat into the lead.
And here we see what I believe is going to be like the classic strategy of Decidueye, where you bring up something with a lot of retreat and Feather Arrow towards the bench.
Yep, and that's exactly what happened. We saw Guzma get that Trubbish,
And
2
we
Feather
do
Arrows,
see-
and now the
yeah.
Vileplume.
I believe he actually got it from the prizes.
Yes, he did. So now Vileplume is in play. Neither player will be able to play item cards, and so now that Flareon is locked out because we had the knockout, and then now Brad can't Rescue Stretcher it.
That's very smart.
So yeah, so it was kind of the perfect sequencing by Pramawat there, and now I think the game gets a lot harder for Brad. Like we talked about, the Trash Avalanche is still doing a lot of damage. Like there's just still a lot of items, although
Here we see the
might-
Hollow Hunt GX too. He could choose to bring up some items, but he's now choosing to bring up some resources for later on in the game.
Yeah, you just can't afford to really use your GX attack on making your opponent's stuff
But
do 60
wow, a
less.
huge card right now. Teammates, it would allow him to at least take the knockout with a Psychic Energy and a Garbodor.
Yeah, Teammates is absolutely huge here. One of the just kind of inherently most powerful cards in the format. It has restrictions, of course, but searching your deck for any 2 cards is an amazing effect and is giving Brad a huge advantage here. Like you said, he can just go ahead and get Garbodor Psychic, and then he has a second attacker. Just the Lysander Gust effect of the Guzma didn't really do anything. He is a little bit limited because he can't play those items, of course. And yeah, it looks like he just took Garbodor Psychic and is just going, I'm going to just guarantee myself the knockout this turn. Nothing fancy about this.
Why not? Put him down to 2 prizes.
Yeah, 2 prizes, an EX knockout, wins him the game. There is a Shaman on the board. Just great place to be if you're Brad. And there it is, Garbodor Psychic.
And we do see a Sudowoodo. He opts not to play it just because it won't really do much, and he'd rather have that bench space for a Tapu Lele off of an N or something like that.
Yeah, he just has to keep that. You're so far ahead right now as Brad that you don't want to make any small mistakes that could cost you, and dropping the Sudowoodo doesn't really actually do much.
And now this is the kind of awkward position that Michael's in. Is Vileplume's in play, but he just took a huge knockout and lost a full Decidueye line. He has a Revitalizer in hand, but he can't play it because of his own card.
Right, and this is the downside. Vileplume does lock both players out of items, and so you definitely need to be careful about the items you're playing and kind of what your deck consists of after you get the Vileplume down.
So we see him bench the Oddish. Why do you think that is?
I think he is trying to A, thin out his deck for the N, B, just having the Oddish on the board isn't necessarily a bad thing. He could also be trying to build up a second Vileplume. He could also just be wanting to have something he can retreat into after the Shaman.
Okay,
Just
yeah, so
like
the Sky Return into the Oddish.
Yeah, like he doesn't want to send up, like he can't send up a GX Pokemon in case anything bad happens, or because then Brad can take a knockout potentially.
And
he
it's
doesn't
kind
want to
of
send up the Vileplume.
a moot point because Brad would have to take 2 prizes to win anyway.
Right, so so that's what I'm saying is he can Sky Return and he'll probably be sending up the Oddish, so just can't take so that Brad can't just win the game.
So there's the Feather Arrow onto the Garbodor in the active and a Sky Return, 50 damage. Most likely bringing up this Oddish.
Yeah, it's his only real option. It's the why it's on the board. He can't really do much else.
Just like, here, take it.
Yeah.
All right, a Psychic Energy comes down on the Espeon GX. Brad is definitely in a huge position right now. Sycamore off the end, a fresh 7 cards.
Yeah, Brad would have needed a Guzma / Lysander effect to just win the game here, but he's still in the commanding position. Pramawat has 5 prizes left. Brad is taking a prize this turn with 2 extra attackers set up. Like, Pram needs so much here, even with the kind of Hail Mary play of the Oddish. I don't think it'll actually end up mattering.
All right, double colors coming down on the Decidueye. And we see another N. Yeah, there's not really much Pramawat can do right now.
I mean, this is how, if Pramawat is going to win this game, this is how you do it, is you end Brad down to nothing. The problem is that Brad doesn't need cards in his hand, really. His board is just set up so well.
He's just like, yeah, I'll attack.
Even if this Garbodor gets dealt with, he has another Garbodor, he has the Espeon, he has a Trubbish that he could draw a Garbodor to play. Like, Brad already has so much just on the board right now that he doesn't need more.
All right, there's the N, and it's not much. It's a bunch of supporters and Decidueye.
And he's already doesn't have any grass.
He already attached for the turn, too.
Yeah, already attached.
We'll probably just see a Feather Arrow and a pass, and then Brad's just like, yeah, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, I mean, Pramawat is making actions. He's putting pressure on Brad, but there's nothing. Pramawat would have to have so many things go right for him here. Just an unbelievable amount of things to actually take the game, because at a certain point Brad is, I'll just attack. I'm going to do damage to you. It's not a knockout, but...
At what point would you consider conceding the game if you're Pramawat?
So the thing is that you have... There's still plenty of time left in the round, in a way. This game has taken sort of a long time. If I were Pram, I would have already conceded, but I think that Pramawat is just kind of playing until the very last moment. I think he's trying to see if there's any way that he can pull this out. And this sort of sounds weird to say, but if Brad wins, it'll be in not that much longer, right? Like, you might as well play out the last turn or two just to see if anything happens.
Yeah, there's also an argument C. Well, what if Brad plays a card that I don't know about?
Sure. That's definitely relevant as well.
But it's definitely kind of a 0% chance for Michael to win this game.
It's as close to 0, I think, as you can reasonably get. But also, I think there's something to be said for Pramawat's play style of just,
there's another Sycamore.
Sycamore off the top. I think Pramawat just kind of believes in, let's even if I have a 1% chance, let's just try to take it. Let's see what happens.
There's the retreat.
Yep, and that's actually the game. He's going to retreat into the Terrestrial Lance Garbodor and take the knockout. So, like I said, Pram probably lost a minute there by playing that extra turn. There's definitely an argument for conceding earlier in the game, like a couple turns ago.
It was definitely looking pretty bad when the first Decidueye got knocked out and put Brad down to 2.
Yes.
And then when he got that Sycamore off the end to 2, I was like, okay.
I would have conceded turns earlier, but I also don't trust myself to be better than Michael Pramawat.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I am not willing to call that a mistake.
There's not much people who can say that they're better than Michael Pramawat.
Yeah, maybe 2, in my opinion. So Brad Curcio takes game 1. Pramawat had some stumbles there, but I think that was kind of what we were saying. So Brad had the Flareon, which didn't do as much as we thought, but it did put pressure on Pram. It did hit that Decidueye. It
allowed the Espeon for 1 energy to do 120 damage to Decidueye.
Right. And then Pramawat also struggled to find Vileplume. So those were the 2 things that, we said, like, you can't beat a turn 1 Vileplume. It's really hard. And also Brad has his Flareon, and those were exactly what went well for him.
Yeah, you actually saw the first 2 actions Pramawat did was Trainer's Mail, find nothing on both.
Yep.
That's 40 damage that you just gave Brad for nothing.
Exactly. And it is not unreasonable if you guys have not seen the Decidueye deck in play or you haven't been playing Pokemon for that long. It is not unreasonable for the Vileplume deck to get a turn 1 Vileplume and a Decidueye GX.
Yeah. You saw that turn 2.
Right, exactly. Like, that could have easily have been the first turn of the game. So I think, sticking by what I said earlier, I think that Brad is advantaged, but I don't think it's by a lot. And I think that if something goes wrong, I think that if Pram gets the turn 1 Vileplume, I think that if Brad misses prizes the Flareon or can't effectively use it, it'll be different. But I think...
Here we see the prizes.
All right, let's see what we got here.
Nothing too bad.
Yeah.
You only really need 1 line of Vileplume.
Yeah, it's not a huge deal.
And one of the 2 Espeons in Brad's deck is in the prizes. Fortunately for him, if he has a Psych Energy, he can still find the other one.
Yeah, so let's see if Pram, as he's known by his friends, can put together something here. He's going to want, to utilize Forest of Giant Plants to put as many evolutions onto the board as possible. He's going to start with the Decidueye GXs and hopefully finish with a Vileplume.
Yeah, his hand does look pretty good here. A couple level balls, an energy, and a Sycamore. And he may even have, he has the Force too. So
yes, here we're seeing
turn one
a
Decidueye.
turn 1, stage 2, 240 HP Pokemon on the board on turn 1.
This is one of the reasons why Force Giant Plants is actually getting banned and expanded once it rotates.
Yeah, so incredibly powerful card, lets you kind of, break the rules of the game inherently. And when when you combine it with these very powerful grass-type Pokemon, this is what happens, is Pramawat's going to have a stage 2 GX in play. He's going to be able to put 20 damage on the board with Feather Arrows at the very least, too. This isn't the end of his turn. He still has a Sycamore in hand.
And we see him attached to the bench, and that's because Psybeam is a very real possibility from Brad's side of the field, and he doesn't want to commit energy to a confused Decidueye.
Yeah, exactly. Decidueye is fine just doing Feather Arrows and such, especially against an Espeon GX, so he's not going to worry about that too much. He doesn't need to be too aggressive. Looks like a Trainer's Mail.
Yeah, the Sycamore did not prove fruitful for Michael, but neither did this Trainer's Mail, really, from what I can tell. It's at least 3 Pokemon. And I don't think the trainer in there is useful.
It's a stadium, yeah. So looks like Pramawat is still not going to have the ideal turn. I know it sounds weird to have a Decidueye GX on the board on turn 1 and say it's not ideal, but this is actually far from ideal for Pramawat. It looks like, I think he has a Dartrix in his hand, so he can't, oh, no, sorry, there's another Rowlet, excuse me. So he's going to just, oh, he does, okay. So he has some stuff in play, he has a...
He's the N for next turn.
He has an N for next turn. He's definitely, it's not as if he's losing here. He's putting damage on the board. And this was a fine turn 1, but it's definitely not optimal.
Like, this is what you expect. Like, this is the baseline. Like,
right.
This is what my deck will do most of the time.
Right. Like, when your opponent does this against you, if you're Brad, you're not complaining here, right? You actually feel sort of lucky because you know what the worst case scenario is.
All right, and there we see a Field Blower taking out the Forest, which is kind of good that, well, he got the other Forest. Brad knew about it.
Yeah, there's just no, there's nothing else to remove with the
and he was playing a Sycamore. So
yeah,
Sycamore drawing 7 cards. He does hit the Psychic Energy to use Energy Evolution, so we will see a Psybeam for 60.
Yeah, so again, the power of Energy Evolution, letting you search your deck. Brad,
it's such a good ability.
Going to look through his deck. We've seen both players do this. They're going to look through their deck and just check what's prized, make sure they know exactly the contents of the deck they're working with and what they can potentially draw off the prizes. Something you'll see a lot in tournament play that maybe you don't see in casual play as much.
There we see an Ultra Ball from Brad. Getting that Trubbish. Another thing that we haven't really talked about is the Garbotoxin Garbodor. How big of a role player is that in this matchup?
So I think the problem... So obviously the Vileplume deck has a lot of Pokemon that you want to... that has a lot of abilities you want to shut down. But one of the problems is that in this specific build, especially with the Flareon, Garbodor, Trash Lance Garbodor is so good that you want to save all your Trubbishes for that guy, kind of, just you want to be attacking. It's definitely not a... You want to get it down if you can, but Brad, especially because of the Flareon, is clearly prioritizing the Trash Lance Garbodor. We saw it last game. Even after the Flareon happened, I'm just doing 160. It's still a good, it's still a good attacker. And we actually see the Garbotoxin Garbodor in Brad's discard pile, discarded off the Ultra Ball. Doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't value it. He just may have valued the other cards in his hand more. But based on what we've seen from Game 1 in Brad's deck list, I'd say he's much more on the Trash Lance plan.
Yeah, that's interesting to see, especially because Michael's deck is so ability heavy. And we see the Field Blower come down from Michael, getting rid of the Choice Band, which is pretty big. It kind of adds a lot of damage dealt to these Decidueyes, and then plays the Forest again and an N. And now we see his hand. He has a Decidueye. He has a level ball. He could get another Dartrix and get a 3rd Decidueye if he chooses to.
Yeah, so this is another part of why this deck is so powerful, is that I think people tend to talk about Vileplume because Vileplume is just this very frustrating card to play against, very powerful card. But even if you don't have Vileplume, Decidueye is just incredible when you can play them so quickly. Right now, Pramawat, without using his attack, without using any energy, will just be doing 6 damage counters around the board, basically however he wants in pairs of 2.
And there we see a setup from Shaman EX, drawing 4 cards. Has Revitalizer, but no grass Pokemon in the discard. And I think there's 5 or 6 items. But thankfully, with 3 Decidueye in play, he's able to take a knockout on the Eevee on the bench.
Yep, so this is, again, not attacking that confused Decidueye. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to take a knockout. I'm going to put 20 on this Trubbish. If you can't evolve the Trubbish next turn, I'm going to knock it out. Like, Pramawat is just not risking anything, right? Normally, I'm attacking with a Pokemon. That means I've put energy onto it. If it gets knocked out, I lose my energy. I lose all these cards. But with Pramawat's position here, with the Decidueye GX, he's just saying, I'll Feather Arrow around. Doesn't really cost me anything. They're just out. This one can stay active forever until you knock it out. I don't care. I have this other one built up to start attacking when I need to. It's just the Decidueye GX is just an incredibly powerful card.
And one thing that Pram actually did was he didn't really find a way to get that Decidueye out of the active to attack with like Razor Leaf or something like that, but you also don't really want to. He plays 3 Acerola, so he could just, I'm going to soak up some more damage, and then Acerola, you get to use Feather Arrow twice with that same one.
Exactly. You can Feather Arrow, Acerola, drop it back down, Feather Arrow again. It doesn't matter. And even if he didn't have Acerola, it's just sort of like I was saying before, who cares, right? Like, you can damage this one. I don't really care. I'm not putting anything into it. I'm just Feather Arrowing around. I do think he has the Acerola in hand, actually, too, which will be big.
Yeah, and there we see a Wonder Tag from Brad. He's eyeing down that teammates.
Yeah, so, the Eevee was knocked out with Feather Arrow, so teammates is live.
But he also has that Bridget, and I think that's what he's going for.
Yeah, the tough part here is that the Bridget just gets you more cards, basically, because you want to build up your board. Because, again, Pramawat is putting so much pressure on you by those Feather Arrows spreading around that you want to have multiple copies of your small HP basics here so you can start evolving into multiple things. For instance, Brad is fine having the one Espeon, especially because we know the other one's prize, but he wants a Flareon down, and so he needs 2 Eevees to kind of protect, right? To say, you can knock out one with Feather Arrows, but you can't knock out 2 in a turn, so hopefully I can Flareon one of them next turn. And the same goes for those Trubbishes that are in play.
Yeah, it's definitely a heads-up play from Brad, and we actually see the Flareon in his hand, so if at least one of these Eevees survive till next turn, he will be able to increase all of his damage output by stage 1s just against
doubling the damage output, essentially.
And we might even see a Divide GX, maybe?
We could. It depends on what Brad plans to do. Divide can definitely get better once he can actually start taking big knockouts with it. But as Brad decides to divide, it also can just put a lot of pressure on different Pokemon, so that Trashalanche that maybe can't get a knockout quite can start can actually get those knockouts once the damage is applied.
All right, and there we see a Wonder Tag from Tapu Lele, getting a Guzma most likely. Okay, this is great because now he has the option to knock out both Eevees.
Yep. So, like we were saying, Brad wants to put multiple of each of the basic Pokemon on the board to kind of make sure that Pramawat can't take care of them, but it looks like he can now. That's what he chooses to do. He could also do the same thing with the Trubbishes. And let's see. Yep, he does take an Eevee, so it's going to be Pramawat is saying, it's much more valuable for me to make sure that you can't Flareon here. I don't want to see that Flareon come into play. 3 Feather Arrows on that Eevee, take a knockout. I haven't attacked yet.
That's insane. This is great.
Yeah, 3 Decidueye GX does a lot of work. He even gets to, he's already committed.
Touch up a Tapu Lele on the bench.
Yeah, he's already committed the energy to the Decidueye with all that he needs, so he's just attaching to the Tapu Lele, taking a knockout. And now, like we said, Brad's plan is not going to work. He cannot get the Flareon out. 2 Eevee knockouts, Pramawat at 3 prizes, and this isn't even the optimal deck, right? This isn't even the optimal setup, right? There are no Vileplumes in play. Brad is still free to play these item cards like Ultra Ball. It is just the power of Decidueye GX. Even when this deck is only half functioning, it is still incredible.
Yeah, this is actually kind of better for him because he has cards like Revitalizer and just more like Ultra Ball or stuff like that. He's able to keep rebuilding these Decidueye if Brad ever gets a chance to knock him out.
Yeah, that's definitely a factor. Is Vileplume does limit your ability to use items as well, so it limits what you can do with your deck. So you really have to think about, okay, when is the perfect time to play Vileplume? Whose items are more important? Who relies on them more?
Yeah, and honestly, Michael's deck has way more items than Brad. All right, so we see an N. It will put Michael down to 3 cards. Brad's trying to mount a comeback here.
And we have the overwhelming power of Decidueye here. Just Michael has taken 3 prizes by attacking once, just Feather Arrowing the rest of the time. Brad does find that Garbodor, so he's going to kind of protect that Trubbish.
He finds his first Trash Lanch, and he will Psychic for quite a little bit of damage, but it's not really going to be enough to even come close to a knockout.
Just 150, which it's funny to say 150 doesn't come close to a knockout, but Decidueye GX has a lot of hit points.
All right, there's a Trainer's Mail. Does it find, Michael, anything of use? There is a Sycamore. 2 Sycamores, honestly.
Yeah, he's going to take the Sycamore. I think
he was definitely looking for maybe a Acerola or something like that.
Yeah, Acerola could be big. I think he just wants to draw cards. We do have a count of 6 items in the discard pile, which is nice. There comes the first Oddish of the game.
That's crazy to think it's the first Oddish.
No Pokemon to get back with the Revitalizer.
All right, 7 brand new cards for Pramawat. Does he get anything of note? He has the Ultra Ball, so he can Ultra Ball for the Gloom, get a Vileplume in play.
Yeah, he can definitely now set up that Vileplume, and now it's kind of putting Brad in a position where he can go, okay, well, I haven't had this Vileplume out. I wanted to play my trainers, my items, and now I'm going to put you to where you're almost losing the game, right? I'm going to have 2 prizes left or something like that by the end of this turn, and you can't play items. So it's kind of just saying, all right, your turn, but you can't play half of your deck.
Yeah, and remember, he still hasn't used Hollow Hunt GX. That's another option for him, especially with so much damage on the active Decidueye. There's the Vileplume coming down. Let's see what he decides to do.
He has ability to Hollow Hunt. Well, he's going to Feather Arrow and place those first. But he has the ability to retreat Hollow Hunt with the bench Decidueye GX and kind of say, I have an Acerola in my hand, so I can kind of save this Decidueye with all the damage on it and replay it next turn. He can also put more pressure on the board by attacking and just giving up the Decidueye.
He also has that Tapu Lele on the bench. But no, he decides just like, this is a sacrificial lamb. I'm fine with it getting knocked out.
Yep.
Razor Leaf.
Yeah, putting a lot of pressure on so that he can not take all 3 prizes next turn with 2 Feather Arrows onto the Trubbish, and then an attack onto the Espeon.
Oh wow, that's great. All right, here we see an end, but like you said, he has everything he needs on board. It's kind of how Brad was game 1, where he didn't really need to play anything off these ends.
Yeah, exactly. He just the end is going to draw Brad a lot of cards and put Pramawat down, but again, we're just nothing. Who cares? We don't need cards in our hand. We just have all the cards on the board, basically. And Pramawat's hand is completely dead. He just has 2 Pokemon and a Trainer's Mail, but it's likely not going to matter.
And I see a lot of items in Brad's hand also.
So we're going to see 140 damage. We're going to take the knockout here, just doing a quick count. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 160. Either way.
Let's see. A game winner right now is a Guzma off the top. But he still can just kind of sit back, maybe Hollow Hunt.
Well, he's in a similar position as Brad was in the last game, which is, yes, he has ways to win this turn, but he can also wait a turn. Brad is in a better position than Pram was last game, being behind. Like, I just don't think Pram was ever winning that game, whereas I think Brad can still maybe have outs here. But it's not like he needs to really rush, right?
Yeah. So there we see double Feather Arrow come down on the active, and then an Energy Drive for the knockout. Now, Pramawat has 2 prizes left to Brad's 4, and a lot of damage on his field for both players, honestly.
And Brad considering what to do now. It looks like he is going to go ahead and promote a Trubbish. Consider the Tapu Lele, but decides, you know what, this Trubbish is probably not long for this world. Let's see if we can get something going on. Looks like we just have a bunch of item cards in Brad's hand. He does have a Tapu Lele as well, but just him fanning out, there's just so many items.
And this is the one thing that really hurts when you're playing against decks with Vileplume in it. That Allergy Pollen shutting off items means a lot of your deck is unplayable. But here we see a Wonder Tag again, most likely for teammates. He was eyeing it earlier, but chose Bridget instead. It may come back to help him now.
Yeah, just a very, very powerful card. Probably the best option here. You know, he can play something like a Sycamore and draw more cards, but so many cards in his deck he just can't play because they're items. So he may as well take the teammates, guaranteed get what he needs.
Yeah, unfortunately for Brad, he is 10 damage short of knocking out this Tapu Lele GX with a Trash Avalanche. He has a Choice Band in hand, but is unable to play it because of the Vileplume.
There's the teammates.
I knew.
Man, this 10 damage is going to come back to bite him.
Did you see what he grabbed with the teammates? I actually
It looked like a
missed it.
Trubbish and something else.
Gotcha. So you have Brad with just over 9 minutes.
A
on the
Trubbish and a
clock.
Garbodor. All right, so we're going to see an Acid Spray. Trying to discard the double colorless from the Tapu Lele.
Here we go.
And a Tails.
Tails.
Wow. All right, now the ball's back in Pram's court. There's an Acerola. Does that do anything?
So he can...
It gives him another Feather Arrow if he chooses or to pick up the Tapu Lele. He's really just trying to take the knockout on the Espeon GX since it's already heavily damaged. But it has 90 hit points left.
Yeah, so he's just going to go ahead and Acerola up the Tapu Lele, kind of clear that damage off of the board. He even gets the double colorless back, which is kind of unlike a lot of the Acerola type effects we've had before.
The last one that did it was probably Mr. Briney's.
Yeah, Mr. Brady said that AZ made you discard them.
All right, so he promotes the Shaman, maybe looking to Sky Return.
There's a double colorless on Shaman.
And you see him holding the Tapu Lele in hand. That's just probably because an N.
Yeah, he just wants to give himself the basically highest density of good cards, live draws left in his deck if he happens to get end or anything goes wrong, or even if he needs, you know, a Guzma next turn or something like that. No real reason to play it before you know exactly what you want to get.
All right, so with this Sky Return, do you promote the Vileplume or the Rowlet?
I think you have to, yeah, he's choosing to promote the Vileplume. He's just saying, I have access to Guzma next turn off the Tapu Lele. If you knock this out, which you kind of are incentivized to do, that's fine too. I'll get my turn of items, right?
Yeah, my deck is now live again. I can go through it really fast.
You won't have a turn. It looks like Brad's actually just going to go ahead and concede. He's saying, you know what, the game's not quite over yet, but time is just dwindling down, and I'm not going to be able to win this one.
7 minutes left for game 3.
And this is actually interesting, too, because there are... so last game we were saying, you know, Pram can hang on for a little bit longer because if Brad wins, it's going to be kind of quick. And that was kind of the opposite, right? Where if Pram were to win that game, it could easily take 5 more minutes just because he has to make feather arrow decisions, especially if the Vileplume gets knocked out. He can play item cards. Like, there are a lot of things that Pram can do to whittle down the clock. So... it was wise of Brad to concede there. Unfortunately, it probably means that we're not going to finish this game, or finish this match rather. We do have 6 minutes, so it could happen. But you know, we've used 44 minutes of the clock on these 2 games so far, and neither of them actually came to like a natural conclusion. So I think that's going to be pretty tough. But you never know what can happen. There can be, you know, both of these decks are playing basic Pokemon with small hit points, so we'll have to see. Both of these players are definitely aware that time is ticking down and are going to play as fast as possible and try to actually end this match and avoid a tie.
Yeah, we've seen this scenario plenty of times, but we've also seen where a Vileplume can just shut your opponent out of the game. And you have to think Brad, that's in the back of his mind. He's like, what if I just go like attach pass? And he goes Vileplume, get something set up. And
absolutely. I mean, I think anytime that you're in this sort of position, you're just thinking, what's the worst that could happen, right? What's the worst possible thing I can do?
And you actually see Brad start with the Eevee again, his ideal starter in this matchup. And nothing of note in the prizes really for Michael. And Brad, kind of the same, like they're generic prizes.
Yeah, the
like
Espeon GX isn't great, but we haven't actually seen Brad get more than one Espeon on board
so
anyway.
I saw the Tapu Lele in Brad's hand to get the bridge, but he just naturally draws it.
And
now this is like, well, okay, you're not going to kind of like cheat me out of a game. Now
Right.
like you have to
we were
actually
just,
beat me.
Yeah, we were just talking about how, things can go wrong. Like, oh, what if I just don't have Pokemon on the bench or anything? And, I get benched out. But now with Brad having 4 Pokemon in play, that can't really happen. We do have a lot of time left. I mean, not a lot of time left, but we do have 5 minutes left. So there are going to be, multiple turns played for
At
each
least
player.
like 3-4,
Yeah,
depending on how good Pramawat's turn is.
Yeah, that's a thing you'll see a lot when there's a little bit less time left, or even just when time has been called going into Game 3. Players will just do whatever they can to get as many Pokemon on the board as possible and just say, I'm not going to win this game, I'm not going to lose it either. So there is some room for actually playing the game here, but we have so little time left.
And you actually saw that Brad did not have the Psychic Energy for Energy Evolution and didn't have an Energy Attachment at all. So that kind of puts him behind a little bit, and now he's going to have to play catch-up.
Yeah, we'll see. The unfortunate thing here going down to such low time is that, as you alluded to earlier, Pramawat's turns just kind of take a long time usually. There's going to be deck searches. He's gonna want to be searching multiple times if he has a good hand. Trainers, mails, lots of shuffling, lots of just moving pieces, evolving to Decidueye, evolving to Vileplume. That it would not surprise me if Pramawat's turn ate up half of the clock right now or more.
Yeah, honestly, it probably could be the whole clock.
Yeah, that's absolutely possible too, and not through any fault of Pramawat's. Just there's a lot of actions to make. There's a lot of decisions to make.
Like when this deck had Battle Compressor, it was even worse.
Yes. So 2 Rowlets on the board. I didn't quite get a look at Pramawat's hand.
It's serviceable. Like he has the Tapu Lele, Trainer's Mail, and an Ultra Ball. So it really depends what he wants to do. He kind of wishes it was a Shaman instead of a Tapu Lele.
Sure. So he is going to Wonder Tag here. Just going to go ahead and find a Sycamore. He's saying, I want to draw as many cards as possible. These are items going into my discard pile, but this game is not going to go long enough for Garbodor to be a real threat, probably. And he can even fire off the Trainer's Mail before that.
There's a level ball. Okay, that's good to see. But again, it's just more time off the clock.
Yeah, so
and this Decidueye deck doesn't even really take prizes that fast either.
So interesting thing there is he has a level ball, but he has no forest in place. So he's just going to get another Rowlet, just kind of fill the board with those and not worry about evolutions. He could have done something tricky maybe and gotten a Dartrix and then discarded it to revitalize it back or something, but he's just playing if I'm going to win this game, it's going to be because I have 3 Decidueye GX in play, I'm just going to Feather Arrow everything. So it's really smart there by Pram to
He actually got the Forest and a Dartrix and a Trainer's Mail too. He's still going to be able to keep spinning the wheel. He has a Shaman EX.
I didn't quite see it. I know there was a Forest of Giant Plants in that hand, but I didn't know if there was another hit there.
Double Forest. Wow.
Yeah,
These Trainer's Mail have not been proving fruitful for Michael this whole match.
Yeah, he hasn't really hit anything great off of him. He is choosing not to take the Forest there just because he already has one in hand and doesn't want an extra card clogging up his hand for when he drops the Shaman this turn. So he's not really worried about the long game. He's just worried about the next couple of turns, and especially this one turn.
Setup. All right, there's the setup 4-4. And like you said, we're already down to 1:30 left. And he's still going. He has another level ball. But other than that, I think that's about it for his turn.
Yeah, he just has supporters, energy, and level ball. So he can play the level ball, but after that, he's not going to be able to really do anything else.
He will be able to do 20 with Dartrix.
Yes, he will be adding damage to the board, but it looks like, based on our clock here, the time should be called during Brad's turn, which I don't think will allow either player to actually complete the game.
That's unfortunate to see, especially at such a high-level tournament, but it's still better than a loss.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not where you want to be, but you'd still prefer it. It looks like, just attacking there, passing back to Brad as we have just under a minute left in this match. And these players both just kind of still have to play the game, right? Once time gets called, I would expect to see just a shrug and a handshake. But right now, they don't know how much time is left exactly. They know that it's short, but they're just trying to play and just see what happens, and maybe they're wildly miscalculating the time, right?
We've seen a lot of shrug and handshakes in our careers.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, there's an Ultra Ball getting the Flareon. So this is looking pretty good for Brad if this game would have gone on longer.
Yeah, it looks great for Brad here. He has the Flareon in play. If he finds a Psychic, which he does, he
Yeah,
can
it
get
was
that
the first
Espeon.
card.
Our clock has ran out, which I think means time is going to be called. Sometimes our clock is a little bit off. So we will let you know when time has been called officially.
Looks like they still have a little bit, because usually the judge puts the dice for us.
Yeah, we see Judge Marcus Raj there from Australia. Good guy. I'm sure he'll let us know when time officially has been called.
There's an Ultra Ball getting a Garb Odor in play.
Yeah, so Brad is just kind of going
This
off
setup was
here.
amazing.
Flareon, Garbodor, Espeon GX. He just kind of has everything that he needs. And yeah, so I think this is what we're going to,
Yeah.
so there we, exactly,
Shrug,
shrug and handshake, yeah. So unfortunately, this match is ending in a draw. Brad Curcio and Michael Pramawat, two of the top 16